Good evening, everyone. My name is John Taves, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that McNally Robinson is located on Treaty 1 territory. That's the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. We have an enormous treat for you tonight. I won't take up too much of your time with procedural notes, as intriguing as those always are, because we will absolutely want to rush along to what is just a truly incredible event. We are here to celebrate, of course, Ann-Marie MacDonald and her long-awaited new novel, Fayne. We last had Ann-Marie here several years ago for the launch of Adult Onset, and we're completely thrilled when we were told that she might make her way out here once again. And because we wouldn't throw such a party without our good friends at the Winnipeg International Writers Festival on board, I'd also like to thank them for not only coming on board to help to co-present this event, but also just to help spread the word a little. And you'll be hearing more from their festival director, Charlene Deal, at the close of the event. I'd also, of course, like to thank Knopf Canada and Penguin Random House of Canada, without whom there would not be a book to celebrate. So many thanks to both of them. Just a few quick procedural notes, and then we'll get on with the actual show. There'll be a reading from this podium from Ann-Marie, and then we'll move along to a conversation between her and our host for the evening, the inimitable Jen Zoratti of the Winnipeg Free Press. That'll take place on these two tall stools to my left. Following that, there'll be an opportunity for all of you to ask questions. And so I will go into full Sally Jesse Raphael mode and wander around with this wireless microphone. This, even if you can project, please do use the microphone. It just ensures that those watching at home can also hear your questions as well. If you are watching at home on YouTube, please feel free to write any questions you might have into the chat, and we will put them to Donald as time permits. Following the event, we'll then be moving along to the signing portion of the evening. So apologies for giving you all this information bright and early. I just don't want Charlene to have to worry about signing logistics. So we'll ask you all to remain in place for just one moment while we safely transport Ann-Marie over to the signing table. One thing I should gently point out is that Ann-Marie is immunocompromised. So we would just ask that you all remain on the other side of the book table while you were getting your books. Just feel free to chat there. And rest assured that I will be walking up and down the line to write your name on a Post-it note and flap the dust cover of your book. This isn't due to for some arcane reason. It's simply to ensure that you can spend more time talking to her when you get to the table, as opposed to spelling your own name. We have plenty of copies of books at the signing table itself. We also have plenty of copies of books at our central cash desk. So please feel free to get a book signed before you pay for it. Just please do pay for the book at some point this evening. And with that, I now have the incredible pleasure of introducing tonight's participants. Now, Fayne is just an incredible tale of science, magic, love, and identity. It's set in the late 19th century, which is new territory for Ann-Marie MacDonald, but she pulls it off with such aplomb. It's a transportive book, and we're just incredibly excited to hear more about it. Your host, Jen Zoratti, is a Winnipeg Free Press columnist and the author of Next, which is a weekly newspaper that looks towards a post-pandemic future. As a member of the Arts and Life department at the paper, Jen writes about how we live and the things that make life worth living. A fourth-generation Winnipegger, she lives in the city with her husband and dog. Our special guest this evening, true literary royalty, is Ann-Marie MacDonald. She is an award-winning novelist, playwright, actor, and broadcast host. She is the author of the best-selling novels Fall on Your Knees, The Way the Crow Flies, and Adult Onset. Ann-Marie is a graduate of the acting program of the National Theatre School of Canada. In 2019, she was made an Officer of the Order of Canada in recognition of her contributions to the arts and her LGBTQ 2S1+ activism. She is married to the theatre director, Alyssa Palmer, with whom she has 2 children. Please give a rousing Winnipeg welcome for Ann-Marie MacDonald.
Hello, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Without further ado, yeah, shall we? Oh, hello. That is unmissable right there. Okay, it's a camera right here in case. Yeah, no, this is the camera right here, staring at me like she's there. I want to begin by saying I'm so happy to be in Winnipeg, which I love, and at McNally Robinson, which I absolutely love. And I look forward every book tour, and I'm very, very lucky to be having a real live book tour after everything we've been through. And I look forward to coming here. And it's always delicious and a treat. And I consider Winnipeg to be, someone's listening and saying, yeah, but what about, like, are you really gonna play favorites now? Probably. But no, Winnipeg has I think the highest cultural IQ per capita in our country, right? And there's lots of interesting reasons for that, but it's absolutely a fact. So thank you, McNally Robinson. Thank you, John and Chris, for inviting me, and thank you, Jen, for agreeing to chat with me.
My pleasure.
I'm really looking forward to that too. So I'm going to start off with a reading. As John was mentioning, it's set in the late 19th century. We're on a 12,000 acre estate called Fayne. It consists principally of peat bogs and moorland, as well as a crumbling baronial manor. And our young protagonist, whom you will meet, is Charlotte Bell, who in the opening pages is celebrating her 12th birthday. She is confined to the estate due to a mysterious condition. So she's kept on these 12,000 acres for her own good, but she wishes more than anything to go to school and see the world, even though she adores Fayne and adores her marvelous father, but that's enough for now. Here's a little prologue. As a courtesy to those whose sole aim in opening this book be to obtain an answer to the question most often posed me, to wit, what is the secret of long life coupled with mental vigor? And to spare them fruitless perusal of these pages, herewith my answer. I am immortal. The latter assertion may cause the reader to question my claim to mental vigor. But where is the proof that I am mortal? I have not yet died. And if you are reading this, neither have you. So chapter 1. Father, I have an idea. I was peering through his magnifying glass at the feather of a Vermifagora rubifortam. I had plucked it from amid a frowsy heap, the which a housemaid might mistakenly sweep from the desktop into the dustbin and expect to be forgiven, but she would not be forgiven. Let us travel to the nesting ground of this bird. And where might that be? A sheer rock face jutting from the sea, it forms the extremity of an unnamed archipelago in the southern Antipode and is visible at night owing to the phosphorescence of the guano with which it is liberally daubed. He squinted, took the red feather between the points of his tweezers and applied to its quill a drop of glue no bigger than a grain of sand. Father, why is that amusing? It is not amusing per se, rather, in point of fact, tell me, have you been memorizing again? Father, that which you term memorization is to me involuntary. I read, I retain, 'tis no strain to me. I say, how are the L's coming along? Oh, I've long since tackled the M's. Have you indeed? Dear old Menander. Shall I fetch him now and you may quiz me? He smiled. I fear I'm apt to be woolly-headed at this hour. Very well then, father, tomorrow, depend upon it. I shall, of course, be delighted. Do bear in mind, however, there is no great hurry. The ancients have been with us for over 2,000 years. I dare say Mino will keep till Monday. We were in his study, he in his oaken armchair, I perched on a stool at his side. About us on the desktop, a tableau of partially remembered birds was taking shape from the frizz of bits and beaks and bones. Here a headless robin, there a legless lapwing. He inserted the red feather into the wing of our latest specimen, and I watched as the lamplight played at the edges of his spectacles. Father, what is light? Why, it is a property of the sun and of fire, of course. But what is it? Why, I shouldn't think it qualifies as a thing per se. Then how do we come to perceive it? He paused, but did not reply. I asked, what is color? Ah, color is a property of light. He replaced the cork on the blue bottle. Aristotle believed light to be a disturbance of the air, but Democritus said it is made of bits called atoms, and Lucretius said atoms rain down from the sun, in which case the sun must be running out of atoms. What do you think, Father? Oh, I should think the sun has plenty of atoms in reserve. But if not an infinite number, the sun must one day extinguish like a lamp. Pass me I handed him the sandpaper thimble. Thank you. And when the sun dies, so must life on earth, save perhaps whatever giant worms ply its bowels and serpents swim the uncharted depths of its oceans. Does not this give one pause, Father? I shouldn't worry. I expect the sun's atoms are replenished by a celestial process. Of course. Thank you, Father. I am relieved. To what process do you refer? He let out a breath that was half a chuckle and shook his head. I see I shall soon have exhausted my store of knowledge. Certainly not, Father. No one can touch you for birds. He smiled. In addition to being my principal companion, Father was my teacher. He gave me the benefit of the education he had himself received as a boy, first from his tutor, an elderly scholar whose nose dripped perpetually, and then at Strathmore School. I entertained reveries wherein I was myself his boyhood friend, the two of us stoical in the face of canings by masters and bullying by older boys. Father taught me to debate, and many were the evenings we spent working away at our ornithological specimens whilst refuting and affirming by turns. Ought Caesar to cross the Rubicon? Ought Alexander to turn back at the Indus? Why? Why not? What Father lacked in Euclid, he made up for in philosophy. Thus he instilled in me the virtues: courage, justice, piety, temperance, wisdom, and containing all of these, truth. Thus I knew Latin, logic, rhetoric, and Father had managed even to insert into my head a tolerable grasp of Greek. As Thales of Miletus might put it in our own day, what is the most difficult thing in life? Answer: to know oneself. I, however, knew myself fine well. I was the Honorable Charlotte Bell of the D.C. to Fayne. I possessed several intervening names waiting to be brought out of storage and packed in trunks for the trip to court when I should be of age, health permitting. For my father was Lord Henry Bell, 17th Baron of the D.C. to Fayne, peer of Her Majesty's realm of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. For now, however, my condition kept me apart. So we'll accompany her a little ways on her usual walk across the moor. Everyone can hear okay? Yes. It is not possible to run across a moor. Moorland looks smooth from a distance, but with its tufts and tussocks and heathery hummocks, it is convolute as brain, such that, as in accounts of travelers who have been carried off by ferry, only to return and find 50 years have passed in our world in the space of 5 days in fairy world, so it is with distance, whereby a quarter mile across moorland is like a league over ordinary ground. Soon enough, I was no longer running, but plodding, then staggering, joyful to my marrow, for the moor never failed to meet me and best me and buoy me. "Keep off the bog!" came Knox's cry behind me. I raised a hand in acknowledgement, but neither slowed nor turned, for my old nurse squawked the same warning every day. In fact, there was no single bog, but a shifting array of boggy expanses, which were part and parcel of the moor. As I tramped along, I drew a line of sight all the way to the horizon, where the great standing stone jutted from the brow of the North Fell. Off to my right was a track that followed an old Roman road and ran like a spine from Fayne House all the way up to the North Fell. It had been laid down generations before with crushed limestone and crockery that glinned on a moonlit night to guide the wayfarer. I walked through heather, even now budding mauve. I waded through sedge and wove through thistles, sweeping my free-flying locks out of range of burrs. I breasted crowberry bushes and was scolded by a red grouse for coming near its nest. I picked up a sheep path, but presently grew tired of avoiding their droppings, not to mention the sheep themselves, who were wont to stand singly or in pairs in the middle of the path, staring impassively up at me. I pressed on, taking care to keep not only to the high ground, but to the drab, for I knew the greenest grass might prove the merest mantle over a depthless pool. I had it from Byrn that the old folk used to toss treasure into just such pools as gifts to the mother. The Romans knew this and set about draining the lochans and looting the treasure. Rome fell. Byrn it was who had taught me to walk safely across fen without restricting myself to a sheep path. Our old man of all work taught me songs and tried to teach me to borrow the eyes of the plover. He alone braved the moor by night, filling his buckets according to his own system of moon phases. Byrn could find his way by smell, for moorland is an olfactory buffet of stinky peat and fermenty loam, of earthworms, rain, and musk. Peril lies in that which one cannot smell, namely bog fumes. Byrn did not believe in bog fumes. He believed in marsh sprites. Byrn's mouth, when agape with misdoubt, was black like ink, a pool of never-to-be-written words. I do not know how many teeth he had. He must have had some, for he ate and was obstinate with life, as though his doubt extended to the idea of mortality itself. Indeed, it was not because Byrn was credulous that he believed in marsh sprites, but because he was skeptical, and of nothing so much as the scientific presumption to parse what he understood fine well, to wit, on nights when marsh sprites are about, keep off the moor. He was right, for bog fumes, being noxious, are liable to befuddle the wits and prove fatal, owing not to the fumes per se, but to the treacherous terrain of the moor, now solid, now liquid, now something in between, consisting of a stew of sucking force. A sudden mist is hazard enough if caught in one standstill till it lifts. But clear days pose their own danger, lulling one into a false sense of solidity, for after all, there appears to be land clear to the horizon. Cattle have disappeared, swallowed whole, as have people gone out for a walk, never to be seen again. I had the latter from Knox, she never being one to pass up a chance to deter me from danger by instilling fear, whether reasonable or not. Dinna lock eyes with a wild hare, lest he carry the sight of you to fairy. Knoxie, how does fairy square with your Christian faith? Go to sleep now, pet. It was true, however, that nothing about Fen, the moor, that is, was certain, not even its name. Thank you. Thank you. So very deftly done. Thank you.
I know, I always comment on the service here.
This is really nice service.
Thank you. Beautiful reading. Congratulations on a beautiful book.
Thank you
As
very
well.
much, Jen. Thank you.
I think Charlotte Bell joins a really rich literary tradition of 12-year-old girls. And I'm thinking of Harriet Welsh, Harry the Spy. I'm thinking of Anne Shirley from Anne of Green Gables.
Wow.
I think she's just, as you read, you just instantly like her. And she's so smart and she's so curious and you just want to keep living in her brain. Thank you for Charlotte.
Thank you.
So I think that's a good place to start, is where she came from and kind of how you found her voice.
Well, I love that you have evoked Harriet and Anne Shirley, and there is something about the verve and the curiosity, the passionate curiosity that she has, right? And the appetite for life. And I think most people can relate to that. And, you know, it's funny because I really feel like this is my youngest book in the sense of the energy of it, right?
Yeah.
And I knew when I started this that I wanted to have fun, and I wanted to get back to the sheer delight and the bounce of what if that I grew up with.
Yeah.
So that really was the voice. That was her verve coming through, and that insatiable curiosity. And she geeks out, like she knows so many facts. And she does have to learn to have a sense of humor and understand the joy of actually laughing at oneself. Like, well, why would one ever do that? Right.
Yeah, she also has to learn, and this isn't spoiling anything, but I think the fact that lessons don't always happen from tutors or books. So when she finally makes a friend, right, her own age, she learns.
Exactly.
Like, oh, there's so many other lessons out there.
Yes, that she contains something perhaps that is not contained in Father's library.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. The landscape in this book is also, you know, we talk about Charlotte being our protagonist, but the moorlands, the bog, particularly the bog, I think, those are also characters. In that they're also, as Charlotte learns, very richly alive as well. So tell me about that, because I feel like that was sort of a starting place.
It was a starting place, and I'm so glad that you say that they have a life of their own, because that's absolutely true. The land, the earth is a character, the mud is a character, right? There's a voice there that gets actually stronger and stronger and stronger. And I do feel like the earth has the last word in this book. We know so much now, more than even they did then, but where to begin? I'm going to geek out just like Charlotte.
I mean,
but
it's all your brain.
You have the advanced reader's copy there, the arc. So you have that picture that I drew that began, right? Oh, it's. I'm not a visual artist.
That's why I wrote it. Well,
okay.
I mean,
go ahead.
Also very good. So.
I do begin. I tend to begin all my stories with a drawing. And as you can see, I have not, there's a reason why I did not pursue a career in visual arts. But I do consider that it is a good way of being open to the unconscious and to what are the stories that are floating around out there. Who wants to come through, right? And I do believe that we share a consciousness and imagination, and it's always everywhere. So my job is to try to be open to those voices and to try to find, try to create a pattern, right? And that's plot. But in any case, so I drew the surface of the land first, and it's kind of this rippling surface, and it's as though the turbulent the swells of the North Atlantic had been stilled by the wave of a magic wand, and it was earth. Oh, okay, so I know what kind of place I'm in now. I'm in moorland, I'm in a boggy area where it looks like magic. It looks like the land could just start rippling again toward that big old house over there. Okay, crumbling mansion. I think I know I'm in Victoria. I know I'm in Gothic Victorian territory. And observing this is that figure. And I knew it was a very young person, didn't know if it was a girl or a boy. Lots of, romantic hair and romantic garb, leaning toward the masculine side of the garb. But I thought, I'm not sure who this is. But I know that they're looking out there at that landscape. And then the caption came, I had heard something out on the fen. ... What did you hear? So that's the beginning. I thought, oh, I there's a secret out there. And that silhouette of the crumbling manor, I know there's a secret in there because we're in late Victorian territory and we're in Bronte territory.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. Listening to you talk about that too, it also makes me think that this book is very much about the in-betweens of things. So you have like land and water, you have someone who's 12. So for a girl, like that is a very fraught time between childhood and womanhood. You have also in-betweens with genders, we have in-betweens with all kinds of things where it really explores those areas.
Yes, in fact, the estate itself straddles the border of England and Scotland. It is in both and neither. And it's the DC to Fayne. And as Charlotte's mother, whom you will meet, because we do go into the past, she was a ravishingly beautiful, breathtakingly wealthy, first generation Boston Irish-American heiress. One of those young women who went across to Europe and married a penniless nobleman. Right. And it worked out. And they fall in love. Oh my goodness, it's great until it isn't. Because, at the end of the day, you've got to produce an heir. Right. So that's the struggle is to make that happen. But in any case, where are we going with that?
In-betweens of things.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So at one point, the newly minted Lady Bell thinks that the initials stand for a distinguished county. And then she learns to her consternation, disputed county. Does that mean are we real aristocrats or not? Darning it. So it is a protocol and a provenance that goes back virtually to the Magna Carta. Disputed county means that it's officially disputed. And if the dispute were ever settled, the estate would dissolve. If England won, or if Scotland won, then there would be no more estate. Anyway, I'm geeking out again, I'm so sorry. But yes, so it is in both and neither. And of course, there's a playful thing in that. It's concrete, but it's also metaphorical. And we're at a time in the world where people are already starting to understand that old wisdom and old science, otherwise known as magic, is going to be re-articulated as the uncertainty principle, right? Things are not. Something can be a wave and a particle. Things can be in two places at the same time. Even, Einstein coined the phrase spooky action at a distance, where a little particle shifting here is like, oh, something just happened in another galaxy. I don't know how we prove that, but for me, that spooky action at a distance also really resonates spiritually as well as magically. And I think of that scene in Jane Eyre, for those of you who are familiar with the story, where she's starving, it's raining, she's out there on the moorland, and she hears the voice calling to her and comforting her and telling her what she has to do next. And there is something about that I thought that spirit had to be in this book as well. Because I think there are bigger forces that we haven't named or haven't claimed as science yet.
Yeah. You mentioned this book having a youthful energy. I feel like, and I mean, all novels are products of imagination, but I feel like this one feels playful in that way, that you really explored a lot of those geeking out impulses through the things that Charlotte has to learn. So tell me about your research process for this big
Well, she's got that old man of all work, Byrn, with his old ways. And then her father gets her a tutor, a young man of 19 from Edinburgh, who teaches her all the latest science and technology. She cannot get enough of that. So she's got she's got the old ways and the new ways, right? And
you see her mind just opening and exploding. It's so great.
It's very exciting. Yeah. So Okay, what was the question?
Research.
Research.
Yeah, because
Yes.
not only do you have a historical period novel, and you have all the things that Charlotte learns
Yeah.
in like with
Yeah.
her crazy mind where she can just pick up facts. So,
Mhm.
but all of this.
I wish I could just pick up
Can
facts
you,
like that.
honestly.
That's the thing is writing someone who's got an intellectual superpower, you go, oh, this is really hard.
Yeah, now I have to have an intellectual.
Now I
skill.
know.
What's this about?
Yeah, so I love research. I love immersing myself in the world of the story. And I begin writing and I write as much as I can before I realize, okay, I need to know more. So it's a tandem process. And I did very deep dives into the history of medicine. It's of abiding interest to me, especially women and gender nonconforming people and body nonconforming people in the medical gaze, the history of that, and today as well. But certainly that is of abiding interest to me. And there was a very famous French physician of the time who said, le bassin, c'est la femme. The pelvis is the woman. You look no farther for any of her ills or anything about her. It's all in the uterus. So a woman's mental well-being, hysteria, et cetera, right? So I spent a long time researching that. I spent 3 months in the Osler Library of the History of Medicine at McGill University with original documents. Medical charts, and catalogs of surgical instruments. I spent time in Edinburgh and Glasgow and in museums of the history of medicine with all the implements and the operating theaters and the formaldehyde filled jars of, as they say in the book, bits of folk. I know it doesn't reflect that well on me, but I just said I couldn't look away. Yeah. So that's one that was one avenue that opened up. And then I very, very, very much wanted to give the reader an immersive experience such that, and I thought, I want to have the feeling that I'm watching a really good miniseries, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just in it and it's just unfolding and I want you to forget that anyone wrote it. So what do I have to know to drop in those details? And I sort of think of them going ting, 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 right? That detail that tells you what kind of study you're in, that detail that tells you what this stairway is like, what that detail that tells you what she's wearing and how that feels, right? So that every detail needs to always feed into the plot. And that's what keeps things moving. And that's what keeps it dynamic, right? And I did so much research into everything, but fashion as well, right? Fashion of the time.
Yeah.
I couldn't have cared less about it. I was one of those girls who didn't want to wear quote unquote girls' clothes. And so I felt like when I was following Lady Belle, Marie, May for short, and she's a fashion maven, I felt like I was waiting for her to try on all these things. It all looks great and I don't care what it's called, you're gorgeous. But no, I had to find out what that thing is called, what goes on in what order. Oh my God, this is complicated. This is incredible. And then I got totally into it, right? The seafoam cuffs and things. I go, what? I really had to learn. I really had to apprentice myself to this, this heterosexual fashion maven young woman who's very, very happy. You know this song, I enjoy being a girl. She loves the whole thing. And that's, she's good at her job. She follows all the rules, even though she flexes them just a little, just to keep things spicy. So I realized, this isn't just about giving the reader the period experience. This is her power. Oh God, yes, of course, clothes are political. I knew that. And for her, they truly are, because that's her power. And she's so good at it. And the tragedy is that she doesn't understand that she has no power. No power. Right? Yeah. So I had to kind of understand what she thought her power was. And there's some fun to be had with that too.
Oh yeah.
Really fun. And it is, this is actually a book with a happy ending. And I've always thought my books have happy endings because someone survives to tell the tale. Others do not find this as joyous as I do.
It's also very funny.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm thinking particularly, I loved May so much, and we meet her through her letters to her friend, which are of the burn after reading variety most of the time. Tell me a little bit about the inspiration for that, because I find that happening upon the letter, it's almost like you're finding those letters yourself as the reader, and I really, really took a lot of pleasure in that. So tell me about where that inspiration came from.
Oh, well, when I realized that her voice came to me in epistolary mode, I knew that she was writing to her best friend back home.
Yeah.
And then once I had a few of these letters, I realized, oh, right, these are, and placing them through the narrative, right, when it really comes to plotting. And then I thought, of course, who's going to find these, how, right? So that's also fun.
Yeah.
But I realized, it was only a few weeks ago that I realized that for all the various relationships, and there's romantic relationships, etc., that the abiding, most important, powerful relationships are friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And early on, you know, Charlotte's got this classical education and she reads the Nicomachean Ethics, all about friendship, and then is brought up short when she realizes, oh, that's only for men. Women are actually incapable of friendship. Friendship being the highest good, of course, right? And so for her, it's like, well, can I just be an honorary? Well, I could be an exception, couldn't I? But a friend being someone who would follow you into exile.
Mm-hmm.
And friendship is key. And I think, you know, for Harriet, the spy, and Anne Shirley, friendship is central, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And whether that's your spouse or not, that friendship, I think, is key.
Yeah. Yeah, I just remember how much Anne starved for a friend as an orphan, and then with her whole relationship with Diana, and it was taken away, and just how traumatic that was for her. And
exactly.
Yeah, it really, and I think in that area of Charlotte's life too, that's, and for her mother as well, clearly her friend was very important to her, very dear to her, and helping her understand who she was as herself. Right?
Exactly, it's key. It's the central relationship.
Yeah.
Oh, there is a little description of May in that.
Yeah.
The portrait.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. More reading.
This is close to the beginning again. Candle in hand, I mounted the staircase, averting my eyes as usual from the portrait that presided over the landing. As on previous nights, I felt the gaze upon my back as I made to mount the leftward branch of stairs. Tonight, however, I stopped. Tonight, I turned. Tonight, I looked up at the portrait. Tall as a huntress, barefoot like one too, raven-haired and statuesque beneath the shimmer of a silken shawl that slipped from milky shoulders. My mother, framed in gilt. But far from following me with her emerald gaze, she had eyes only for the babe in her embrace. My brother stared out at the world, wee fingers entangled in the fringe of her shawl. Thus, as with the chill baptism of new maturity, I affirmed that paintings are inert, mothers die, and mine had never gazed on me at all, whether in paint or in flesh. She died, Charlotte, exactly 12 years ago, because you killed her. So a little later, Charlotte wakes up from a recurring nightmare and her nurse, Noxie, comes in to comfort her. Noxie, it was so real. I saw him. Who? My brother, I whispered. At the window. She hugged me. Hush, 'twas but a dream. What does he want? We'll say a wee prayer for him. Why? For the repose of his soul. Why isn't his soul reposed? He lost his mother, dearie. So did I. Aye, but you didn't lose your life. He wishes me dead. Oh no, why would he wish such a thing? I killed his mother. 'Twas none of your fault. She died in childbed like many a woman afore her. Then why is he haunting me? Belike he's watching over you. No, He wants me to turn around and what? I shivered. I had no words.
Also in the art copy, there's a letter where you talk about how you love big books, and I think a lot of readers do too. Tell me about the magic of the big book and in how it leads to that kind of world building. You mentioned sort of wanting to offer readers an immersive experience, like they're kind of watching a miniseries. And I think like it's funny, people talk about like how we have no attention spans, yet we'll binge entire series of television shows. I think this offers that sort of opportunity to have those really fleshed out worlds and really get into those things. So tell me about your love of big books.
Oh, well, I was raised on big books when I was 10. And there was no contradiction. I was also crazy about Bugs Bunny and all the 1960s TV series and the Beatles and the Brontes and right? C.S. Lewis, etc. But I was 10 when I first read Jane Eyre. And it rocked my world. And oh goodness, you know what? There's a letter in there's a new edition of Fall on Your Knees, and there's a letter to the reader, which tells this story of how after I read Jane Eyre, I tried to transform my room to look like her cheerless school bedroom at Lowood School, with a tapestry which consisted of the toilet lid cover, you know, like shutting off. And I hung that on my wall, and I had like a picture and an old enamel bowl from the kitchen. And I would hope every night that in the morning I would wake up and the surface of the water would be frozen. But it was the 1960s, so it wasn't. And other touches like that in my room. And I remember my sister, the very one who had handed me this big book, in which I got completely absorbed, said, "You think you're Jane Eyre, don't you?" I did. Yeah. But yeah, so a big book to me, just like, it's generous, right? And the thing is too, that with a book that it's up to the reader, right? I just really feel like I'm a reader, and I try to write I always write with the reader in mind. That's who I write for. I don't write for any other reason. I want to share something that I want to invite people into, right? And quite often, because there are very contemporary themes running through this Victorian novel, right? And that seems to have been the way. When I look back on my work, I think, oh, I'm inviting the reader on, or the audience member, on a journey that, based on their own perhaps beliefs and proclivities, they might not necessarily choose to take. It was just laid out for them as, do you want to go here with these kind of people? No. But there's the invitation, and hopefully people are welcomed into the experience. And that is something that I try to do too. And I think of that when I think of my late Lebanese mother in that way, because she would always, when a meal really, listen, there's 15 things on the table. And that's what I try to do. I go, I'm going to try to invite as many people into this story as possible. Just like there's going to be something for everybody. Everybody's welcome at this table. If you go away hungry, it's not my mother's fault.
I think it's probably time to take questions from the audience, if there is any. There he is. So I don't know if anyone has a question for Ann-Marie.
Sure.
And just as a reminder, if you put up your hand, I will come to you.
We will come to you.
Hi. I think your voices are fantastic. I remember listening to you years ago do the Bugs Bunny part of your story. It was the first word that
Oh, that's right. That's
at the
right.
art gallery. My question to you, and I don't know if it's wild or not, but your voices are so fantastic. And you're with your characters for so long writing your books, which I love all.
Thank you.
Like, does any of the characters come with you? Like an imaginary friend, or is there one that gives you comfort, or one that stays on your shoulder forever and a day? Because there's some characters that are phenomenal. like
That's-
where the crow flies.
Yeah,
It was my life. Like I lived
Okay.
it was like fantastic.
yeah.
But I'm not a writer. You are. So do you take any of your characters with you?
I love how you've expressed that, and really they live in the books, and they live in the readers. No, I give them away, right? I give them away completely, but I also, pardon me.
You own them. They're so, what you speak and your voices are so in character.
It's nice to come back in contact with them via reading like that. And you know, there's a stage adaptation of Fall on Your Knees in the works right now. And when I see it in 3D, because it began as a play, I thought I was writing a play when I started it. And to see them in 3 dimensions, it's like a rebirth. Or it's like a continuation. It's like a completion of what I began all those years ago when I thought I was writing a play. So yeah, they're still alive. I still feel like I can connect with them and contact them. But really, they don't. No, I can't. That would actually be selfish of me. Do you know what I mean? And it's interesting because you referred to the character being here. That's where the reader is. That's where the ghostly, questing, kind, tenderly hopeful person right there that I can't quite see is always there, right? That's the reader. That's who's with me when I'm working.
Great.
No, it was very kind. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I am in awe of you. Like a couple of years ago when I was reading Where the Crow Flies, I was living in Toronto, and I would daydream about meeting you in Fiesta Farms.
And we didn't? How did that not happen?
But it worried me because I wasn't sure whether I would be able to do anything other than bow. But I wonder, I'm still recovering in a way from Where the Crow Flies.
Okay, yes, yeah.
And I wonder how you recover. I mean, these characters. And to refresh my memory a little bit, I went into the last couple of pages, and I'm so happy that Madeleine meets, with Ricky and Colleen. And I wonder, how do you recover to go on to the next?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's very true, because it does take recovery. It takes time. You know, it takes a lot of time for me to finish a book. And when I was younger, I used to just try to power my way away from it and into other things. And yeah, that costs too much adrenaline. That's stressful, right? To try to just go, okay, now we just turn the motor on and we just get away from all of that, right? So I'm a little older and smarter, and a little, I think, kinder to myself, because you're absolutely right. This is a very deep process, and those are abiding characters and stories, and it does cost. It really does. And my wife has observed that. I have gone through some kind of illness every time I've written a book. But here I am, and I'm feeling great, and I'm grateful to be so. But yeah, I think there is, it's work. So yeah, having a little bit more patience and kindness is really important. Yeah. So thank you. No, I'm not powering away from anything now. I'm just here. Good. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question from your standing room gallery.
Oh, hi. Oh, hi, Camilla.
How are you?
Fine, thanks. So nice of you to come. Thank you.
I'm curious. I feel like I've been watching you write your way into the present moment through your books. And I think when I was expecting your next book to be about the future. And so it's fascinating for me that you've gone back into this story. And I'm just curious, when you write, are you sort of inadvertently kind of reconnecting to things to time periods that you explored briefly in other works that you wanted to dig in deeper? Like what's the?
Yes, there was a play that I wrote and the Shaw Festival did it, and it played at the National Arts Centre. It's called Balmoral, A Natural History. And some of these themes started there. And yes, you'll recognize that because you're a theater person, right? And so you're absolutely right. But you've made a really good point about working closer and closer to the future, because I think this book does do that in the guise of being set back there, because the urgency of what's happening now is the journey of this book. It's what this book is about really, as I said, the planet, the Earth becomes more and more of a voice and more of a character. And I won't do any spoilers, but it does. Now you finished the book? Okay, then yeah. So then you'll think about this question when you finished it. Yeah, cool.
And we do have time for 2 more questions, if there are any lurking out there in the audience.
Oh, I think there's one.
To the question of where your characters are and where you were, for me, it's Good Evening, Desdemona. And when you read that, that is so out of there. And I often wonder, like everything about it, Romeo and Juliet, Othello. The question is where was your headspace when you were writing that? Because it's almost like, compared to your other books, it's just so different from everything else that you've written.
Okay, that's a play, and it has played here a couple of times, a long while ago now. But it's a comedy. It's really fun. I actually see it as being, in fact, a whole lot like everything else that I've written, because it takes on an established world. In this case, the world of Shakespeare's heroes and heroines, and it utilizes the language and the tropes and the dramatic devices, right, to tell a new kind of story, new oil, old lamps. And just you get the fun of the recognizable devices with but we're going there in this vintage vehicle. Whoa, right, this kind of thing. And the same thing with Fayne, right, which is I get to play with the Victorian toy box and the Victorian dress-ups, and I include language in that, right? To take us someplace which actually I think, well, my intention anyway, that it resonates very much with the here and now.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you find like Charlotte's corsets aren't the only constraints,
Yeah, that's right. Exactly, right.
Yeah.
But I love that you found it was that out there and you wonder where my headspace was. It really is just also very playful, right? And I always want to be a little bit subversive, but subversive and joyful at the same time, right? And that was the idea there. And I was a lot younger too. I thought I was just going to take the piss out of Shakespeare. And then, of course, I ended up by going, I really love Shakespeare. Like, wow, right? Because I thought, I'll treat Shakespeare the way he treated his sources. I'll just do what he did. And I did, and it worked. He was onto something. Thank you.
Maybe one more question?
Yes, indeed. Is there a dramatic final question from the audience?
No.
And if not, then I can certainly turn things over to yourself, Jen, and you, Ann-Marie, if you have a final question or any closing comments you might like.
Well, I don't know if you wanted to do a last read.
Sure. Thank you. Something short. It's from the end of the book, but fear not, it's not a spoiler. A patch of mist is on the east moor. I hear the swallet. It is calling me to a quiet place of dry bracken. If you are very still and can wait, they will come out to look at you. Eyes. Nature has so many of them. Eyes are one way of seeing. Nature has so many ways. Up on their hinds of many legs they stand, insects in their fine stitched suits, antennae inclined, nature looking back at you. A rabbit, a fox, a bird alights, looking. Flight and pursuit are set aside. Even the dry grass is bending attentively with the ascent of a beetle. Nearby stirs a fringe of dwarf birch and willow, loosely woven, as though nature were hinting how to make a basket. Nature is full of hints and warnings. Be so quiet they cannot mistake you for anything but attention, and they will come. They bring tidings of the dark pool that rises and sustains us all. Now the trees are bowing their crowns. They know. If you wish to see the face of God, be still, and God will come to look at you. Will you see that face if you rip off its mask? No, it will turn away. Will you see it if you pluck slowly at it, thread by loosed thread? No, it will unravel. If you wish to see God, let yourself be seen. The dark pool winks now into view in a bolster of mist. Eye of creation. Thank you.
Wow.
Oh, hello.
Hi, I just appeared. You conjured me. I think we're just going to take a moment to say we're probably never going to be read to like that. And if we all maybe just had a little sign-up sheet, might you come and like read us bedtime stories?
I know.
It's, yeah, what do they call that? Like, that's some kind of, that's cool new marketing.
That's new marketing. I think, well, you've already pointed out that Winnipeg is kind of ahead of the.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
So we're ahead of the wave on this one. So you can talk to me afterward and we'll put together a little petition. What an amazing evening. Will you please join me in thanking Ann-Marie MacDonald for extraordinary. Thank you, Jen, for such a great conversation. It's lovely to hear from a reading from a new book, but it's ever so much more enriching to have the conversation that comes out of that. So if you haven't read this book yet, as I have not, I've just dipped in, but now I'm dying to because I have so much more richness and context. And we've also had a chance to hear the voices, so we're going to know what the people sound like. So thank you both for a really stimulating conversation. It's really wonderful.
Thank you.
And I realize I have very poor manners and I didn't introduce myself first. So my name is Charlene Deal. I'm the director of the Winnipeg International Writers Festival. We just finished our big festival, Fayne last week. And this is one of a little strew of off-season events that we're hosting with our partners, the very wonderful people at McNally Robinson. And as Ann-Marie said early on, we are so lucky in this city, in this province, to have this extraordinary bookstore, this locus of culture in our midst, and this welcoming place where we can gather and hear stories and encounter one another in such a warm and inviting place. So a huge thanks to Angela and Chris and John, who hides behind everything and makes everything go. Okay. So huge thanks to McNally. I was just shepherding around a festival director from Southern Ontario today, and we dropped by here. She had not been to this store before, and she was, this is amazing. You people have no idea how fortunate you are. And I think we do, but in a way it's useful to be reminded that this is actually a very rare thing to have in our midst, this extraordinary place to gather, and that is so full of excellent books and and culture. It's a cultural place together. So we're very fortunate. So we have one more off-season event right in the immediate future, which is a really extraordinary evening with Joshua Whitehead, who's got a new nonfiction book called Making Love with the Land, I think. Is that the right title? Yeah, okay. So he'll be here, and he's one of ours. I mean, he doesn't live here anymore, but he's kind of you know, he's someone that will belong to us for all time. So please come back. That'll be November 11th. And I expect to see many of you back for that. So one more rousing round of applause for this amazing evening. And please remember two things. You're going to want to get a book and make sure that you pay for it. That's this weird rule in this place. And also we need to stay put so that Ann-Marie can be transported to the to the signing table, which is over by the cash desk. So we're going to figure out how the transport works. I don't know, like, is it like
Pick up the chair.
pick up a chair, you know? Anyway, thank you so much for coming tonight. And thank you one more time to both of you. Thank you.